in a quiet little town in upstate New York, not far from the winding Hudson River. There was a neighborhood where the breeze would tug at the tall grass, and the sunlight played across the broad front porches of weathered old houses. Here, in a modest two-story home with white clapboard siding and a shingled roof, Evelyn Morrison lived alone. Evelyn was 83 years old. It had been close to 30 years since she lost her husband, Jack, a man whose deep laugh and steady hands she still remembered more clearly than the faces of neighbors who had come and gone over the decades. She and Jack had raised 3 children beneath that roof. Their eldest son, Michael, had been the first to fly the nest. Michael was always bright, a quiet, diligent student, accepted to a well-regarded university all the way down in New York City. On the day he left, neighbors stopped her in the street. "You must be so proud, Evelyn. He's going places." She could only nod, her heart brimming with hope and a mother's pride. There had been a time, a handful of hopeful, shining years, when Evelyn believed, truly believed, that Michael would someday come back, that he'd return to this old house, take up Jack's tools in the garage, maybe start his own family right here, that he would keep the Morrison home alive for another generation. But times changed. The world outside their little town grew larger, faster, almost without her noticing. Michael found work at a huge accounting firm in Manhattan, marrying a woman he met at work. They moved into a glass and steel apartment on the 34th floor, looking out over the city lights. Each holiday, the visits home grew fewer and farther between. "I've got too much at the office," he'd say on the phone. "Something came up," or "We're just so swamped right now." Not once did Evelyn voice any blame. Whenever Michael did call, no matter how brief, she'd end the conversation gently. "You take care of yourself. Don't push too hard." Every New Year's, she wrote him a card by hand, tucking in a small note in her wobbly penmanship. Even if the reply came weeks late, the tradition stayed. One crisp winter day, a few years back, something changed. Evelyn was reaching for a jar in a high cupboard when her foot slipped and she fell hard onto the cold linoleum in her kitchen. The pain shot up her wrist, white-hot. Alone, gritting her teeth, she managed to shuffle over to where the phone hung on the wall. Her voice shook as she called 911 herself. "It's all right," she murmured to the paramedics as they carried her out. "Must be my age, I suppose. That's all." At the hospital, the doctor told her she'd badly broken her wrist. She'd need to stay for at least a month. 3 days later, just as the sun was beginning to sink behind the snow-laden trees, Michael finally appeared at the hospital. He entered the room and paused awkwardly, hands empty. No flowers, no card. "Hey Mom, you okay?" "Sorry, I can only stay a bit. Got a meeting soon in the city." He checked his watch, explained he'd only managed to grab an hour because the train schedules were a mess, but Evelyn's smile never wavered, not even as she struggled to sit up straighter. In the narrow bed. "Thank you for coming, Michael. It's just so nice to see your face. Makes me feel better, honestly." 20 minutes. Barely enough time to ask how he was, how he liked his new corner office. Michael's phone buzzed almost constantly across those 20 minutes. As he left, already pressing the phone to his ear, he gave her arm a quick squeeze. "We'll talk soon, okay? Love you, Mom." And he vanished down the hallway. Evelyn watched the spot where he'd stood, then let her eyes drift closed. There was a sinking feeling in her chest, a heaviness settling deeper than she'd ever known. She understood, really she did. The world was busy now, people moved fast, yet all she'd wanted was a bit of conversation. That night, lying beneath stiff hospital sheets, eyes fixed on the flickering fluorescent light above, Evelyn whispered quietly to herself, "How long does a mother stay? A mother? I wonder?" From the next bed came the sound of cheerful laughter. An elderly woman, about Evelyn's age, was surrounded by a boisterous family, grandchildren climbing over the foot of her bed, her daughter sharing photos on a phone. With every shout of laughter, Evelyn felt the quiet space inside her heart stretch just a little wider. She went back home after her month in the hospital, a little weaker in the wrist but determined to carry on. Every morning, she opened the blinds to let in the sunlight. She vacuumed, dusted the mantel, tended to her small vegetable patch out front, a little plot of earth bordered with marigolds and trimmed shrubs. A well-loved photo of Jack sat above the mantelpiece. Not far from a simple wooden cross, she'd pause there, hands folded, each morning for a quiet prayer. Yet something had shifted. She found herself stopping in the hallway, looking at the family portraits, and wondering, who would be the last to lock this front door? Would the garden someday be left to brambles and weeds? She kept the thought tucked close, hidden even from herself. Life around her stumbled along as if nothing had changed. Tulips in spring, bright and firm, morning glories climbing up the trellis at summer's height. But Evelyn's smile, once so quick and easy, sometimes seemed clouded by some distant shadow. Once, the word family had meant promise, a sense of security that reached far, far into the future. Now, she felt it slowly turn into something that belonged to the past. And she had no inkling, not yet, that this gentle unraveling would one day lead to a crossroads, to a decision that could not be undone. One winter afternoon, the golden light was slanting low across the hardwood floor, casting long, wavering patterns through the sun porch's glass doors. Bundled in her hand-knitted shawl, Evelyn sipped her tea and listened to the kettle hum quietly atop her old kitchen stove. The house was still. Only the soft pop and hiss of the kettle kept her company as another day drifted by, quiet and unchanged, in the home that once rang with the clamor of family but now sat waiting, silent, for whatever might come next. Just then, the screen door creaked open, and an unexpected visitor stepped into the house. "Well now, what brings you here?" Evelyn's voice carried a note of gentle surprise. "It's not every day you drop by at this hour." Her hands, steady and practiced, poured a fresh cup of tea. She motioned for her visitor to join her at the kitchen table. Her favorite old spot, right across from the worn plaid sofa and below the soft ticking of the living room clock. It was her younger son, David. He looked restless, uneasy, almost as if just sitting there made him nervous. He cupped his mug, eyes shifting to the floor, while Evelyn waited, the hush between them stretching almost to breaking. At last, David spoke in a low voice. "Mom, there's something I think you should know. I hope you'll hear me out." Evelyn set her cup down and nodded, her smile gentle, though her heart was beginning to thump with quiet worry. "It's just, well, Michael's been looking into the will. Into the inheritance, I mean. I found him reading legal sites, looking up property records for the house and land out back. Seems like he's really thinking about, about what's going to happen to it all." Those words landed with a jolt. Evelyn's eyes widened, so much so that she forgot to blink. "The inheritance?" she repeated softly. "You mean this house? The backyard? The garden and all?" David nodded, his face apologetic, his shoulders drooping as though weighed down. "I don't have all the details, Mom. I just thought, you should hear it from me." Evelyn sat in silence, her calm only a thin cover over a sudden upwelling of emotion. Her thoughts churned. Had she not always been clear? Hadn't she always told all three of her children, again and again, that everything was to be shared equally? Still, when she answered David, her words trembled just a little. "I see. But I've always meant for it to be shared. All three of you. There's not going to be any favoritism or," she searched for the word, unfairness. Her voice was measured, but somewhere deep inside, a thread of caution wound its way through her heart. Sharp and prickling. Why now? After all these years, why would Michael care so much about the inheritance? That evening, after David left and the house was quiet again, Evelyn went about her usual routine, starting supper, setting the table, tending to a pot of chicken noodle soup on the stove. But several times, her hand faltered. She stared into the simmering soup, spoon limp in her grasp. As her mind replayed the conversation, Michael, who had promised so proudly, "Don't worry, Mom, I'll look after you when you're older." How many times had she trusted those words? How many times had she pictured him stepping up, caring for both her and the old family home? But the facts were plain. For the last several years, Michael's visits came only with long explanations. "Work's just crazy right now, Mom." Calls were brief, and talk of her health met with quick, distracted answers. She'd never complained, not once. But in the quiet hours, she wondered, does he still care about us as a family? Or has this place become little more than a number in a ledger? Another asset to be counted? The questions echoed through her mind, again and again, as night fell. Unable to sleep, Evelyn slid quietly out of bed and stepped into the darkened living room. She pulled open a side drawer and drew out a small, battered notebook, a secret diary, begun the year Jack died. Page after page, she had written down her thoughts and hopes, the turning points and memories of each passing year. She opened to a fresh page. By the faint glow of the old brass floor lamp, she began to write. Fairness isn't only about splitting things down the middle. It's about knowing who truly needs what, and leaving your heart behind for the ones who will treasure it. That's the legacy I want. A parting that brings peace, not bitterness. She closed the diary, exhaled, and nodded quietly to herself. It was a shaky resolution, she knew. Even now, she wasn't sure. Had she decided something? Or was she only promising herself to try? But there was a line drawn inside her heart. One, she sensed, that would shape all the choices still to come. From that day onward, Evelyn found herself thinking differently when she visited the small pine table where she kept Jack's cross and there. Family photo. The place she whispered a prayer each morning, she found herself asking for help. Please let me do the right thing. She read her mail a little more closely, made sure to notice who sent which letter, who left a note or card. And one sunny morning, perhaps a week or two later, Evelyn bundled up, caught the commuter bus into the next town, and stepped into the aging brick building that housed the local community center. There, she asked for pamphlets and handouts about wills, inheritance, and elder law. She spent the morning carefully reading, underlining words, and jotting small notes, things she wanted to ask her attorney. Next time she saw him, if something should happen to me, I want to leave my words behind, not just let someone else decide. In her heart grew a quiet but persistent determination. Her life, her family's story, the house Jack had built, she wanted to bring them to a close with her own hand. It wasn't about money, not really. It was about meaning, about saying goodbye in a way that left truth and kindness in the world. Evelyn Morrison, kind, gentle, a woman who never raised her voice. Beneath that soft exterior, the seed of resolve had begun to sprout and take root. Day by day, she became a little more careful, a little more deliberate. She checked the doors and windows each night, wrote notes to herself about calls she needed to make or people she wanted to thank. A new thought grew with each sunup, a hope that, whatever happened, she would not leave matters to chance or arguments. She would do her utmost to ensure her wishes would be honored, her family given the clarity they truly needed. And, someday, when the house finally grew quiet for the last time, Evelyn hoped it would not vanish into emptiness and forgetfulness. She pictured, instead, friends and neighbors gathering there, a space where laughter echoed, where help was given, and comfort could be found by anyone in need. In that silent winter, as snow dusted the eaves and the garden waited beneath the drifts, Evelyn's small, hidden decision began quietly reshaping the future. Not with dramatic words or grand gestures, but with steady, thoughtful acts, a mother's care, carried all the way to the end. And so, Evelyn herself was still unaware that all of it, the gentle doubts, the lines being quietly drawn, were the first hints of an oncoming storm. The summer of 2023 arrived, pressing down with warm, heavy sunlight even up in the old upstate neighborhood where the Morrison house stood. Cicadas, if anyone had listened closely enough, might have been replaced by the rasp of distant lawnmowers or the shriek of children playing somewhere down the block. But inside Evelyn's home, time seemed to tick a little slower. It was in that deep green heart of summer, as the air shimmered outside and the sweet scent of honeysuckle wafted in. Through open windows, that all three of her children were gathered under her roof for the first time in years. Their annual family reunion, which used to be a boisterous and unquestioned ritual like Thanksgiving or Christmas, had over time become a rare and precious event. There were years when it didn't happen at all. Now, when it did, every hour felt fragile, edged with a kind of nostalgia. Evelyn prepared her table the way she always had, her well-worn hams slicing, cucumbers for her signature pickles, mixing up a potato salad the children always remembered. Between bites of home-cooked food and shared laughter, hints of the past glimmered to the surface. "Mom, you're still making those pickles? Haven't changed a thing since we were kids. Have you?" It was Michael, her eldest, already dressed in his usual office clothes, even though no one here cared. From Susan, her youngest daughter, "I can't believe this room even smells the same. Remember those afternoons we'd sprawl out on the carpet and nap in the sun? I swear I hear Dad's old radio if I close my eyes." The conversation fluttered from childhood memories to gentle teasing, sometimes breaking off into hushed laughter. Even David, usually so reserved, found himself lingering over stories, shaking his head with the ghost of a grin. Evelyn herself couldn't help but smile. "It's hot out there today. Let me make us all a pitcher of iced tea. I'll be right back," she said, rising lightly, skirts rustling against the linoleum. Up to that very moment, the day had been peaceful, one of those golden afternoons you wish could last forever. But after dinner, as dusk crept into the corners of the room and the tired old house settled around them, something shifted. The family had gathered in a circle around Evelyn's big oak coffee table in the living room, once crowded by her children's games and school books, now littered with empty glasses and half-finished conversation. Into the hush, Michael's voice rang out, flat and sudden. "Mom, I think it's about time you wrote up a proper will. I mean, for real, you should do it soon." The words cracked through the air like glass. For a heartbeat, everyone just froze as if someone had dropped a plate and it shattered, but no one dared look at the mess. "Why? Why now?" Evelyn said quietly, folding her hands in her lap. Michael shrugged a little, glancing away as if he hadn't said anything unusual. His voice was breezy, but something sharp lived behind it. "No reason except, well, before anything gets messy, you know. The house. The yard. If something happened, who gets what? It can get ugly. Better to have it all down in writing before there's trouble." He finished with a kind of dismissive wave, barely looking at his mother. "Of course, I don't need anything. I'm busy. I don't have the time or the energy to take on the house or look after it. Let Susan and David work it out. I'm out. I don't need anything." Those words might have sounded noble, like a clear break from old expectations. But, in that instant, Evelyn caught the direction of his eyes, the way he stared at the framed map. Hanging next to the table, it was the same hand-drawn map she and Jack had made decades earlier, outlining every corner of the property, the old shed Jack built, the vegetable beds Evelyn tended, the boundaries of the lot they'd called their own for half a lifetime. Michael was studying it with a focus that felt calculating, as if tallying possibilities, imagining dollar signs instead of laughter in the backyard. "Don't need anything? Is that what you truly feel?" A chill swept quietly down Evelyn's spine, despite the thick summer heat. The others sat in uneasy silence, their gazes drifting to their laps or the window, each one sensing the tension but unable, or too wary, to speak against it. That night, when the house had stilled and her children retreated to old bedrooms, Evelyn lay awake beneath her favorite patchwork quilt, staring into the darkness. No matter how tightly she closed her eyes, her mind replayed Michael's words. "People say what needs to be said, but what lives in their hearts is never so plain." Moonlight slanted through the curtains, painting milky lines across the floorboards. Quietly, Evelyn slipped out of bed and walked down the hallway to the living room, careful not to disturb anyone's sleep. On the bookshelf sat a framed photograph. She and Jack together in their youth, smiling, sunburned, full of plans. Right beside it, that old map, pinned proudly for decades. It carried more than lines and borders. It was the memory of planting the sugar maple at the edge of the lawn, of laughter echoing through evenings bright with fireflies, of children's muddy sneakers tossed by the back door. What if, after all those years, someone saw this place as only an asset? A list of numbers? If love and history were just another item for the balance sheet, Evelyn reached up, gentle and steady, unhooked the frame, and, cradling it close, walked to the kitchen. She set it atop some old newspapers in the deep sink, then opened the junk drawer and found Jack's old lighter, a battered Zippo, scuffed with age. Her hand shook only a little as she clicked the flame and held it to the bottom corner of the map. The paper caught with a soft whoosh, curling at the edges, blackening and crumbling as the fire chased its way through years of memories. That's enough now. Her words were small, a whisper meant only for herself, not of anger, not of sadness, but of a mother's quiet resolution, strengthened across decades of keeping the peace. At dawn, with the dawn chorus outside and the world flushed gold, Evelyn went about the house as if nothing at all had changed. The coffee brewed, the bacon sizzled, and she called her children for breakfast with the same old warmth. "Let's get moving if we want to beat the traffic. I'll drive you to the station. Don't forget your bags." She was once again the loving mother, steady and kind at least. That's how her children saw her. Yet deep inside, a line had been drawn. No one else could see it, but it glowed bright as fire. To trust, or to turn away, to hold on or to let go. The questions lingered, stirring in her heart as another summer passed in the Morrison home. Even in the midst of those silent struggles, torn between the roles of mother and simply Evelyn Morrison, a woman in her own right, she had, at last, begun to carve out some decisions for herself. About this home, about her family, and most of all, about how she would spend her final days, her very own ending. It was just after the new year of 2024, barely a week into January. The world outside still blanketed with a fresh, heavy snow. Evelyn, bundled in her thickest coat and wool hat, was out front shoveling the walk. The wind stung her cheeks pink, but she was proud of the way she kept moving, arms and back working in steady rhythm. That's when she slipped. Her boots skidded on a patch of black ice just beneath the snowdrift at the edge of her walk. She crashed down with a force that rattled in her bones, a flash of pain burning up her right leg. Gasping, she tried to pull herself upright but found the leg crumpled under her like a broken branch. The neighbors found her minutes later, her mittened hand still clutching the shovel, and dialed 911. At the hospital, the news was grave, a fracture high up in her right thigh bone. Her doctor, steady-faced and gentle in his delivery, explained that at her age she'd need surgery and a long stay weeks, if not months, before she could think about standing again. He spoke in careful tones about rehabilitation, about the real and growing need for support at home should she recover. The hospital room was stark and white and cold, the pale ceiling distantly reflecting the beeping and humming of so many silent machines. Evelyn knew physical pain, but this was not the hardest part. It was the ache of burdening others, the shame of sensing that her misfortune had fallen onto someone else's shoulders. How many times had she told herself she was strong enough, only to find herself now, almost helpless, inside the silence and chill of that hospital room? It was on her third day there, as dusk slipped in and her spirit had begun to sink, that her daughter Susan appeared at her bedside. Susan had taken emergency leave from work, her eyes tired but luminous with concern. She brought little comforts, Emily Dickinson poems, lip balm, warm socks, and spent the night curled in the visitor's chair. She helped Evelyn roll onto her good side. She combed her hair with gentle hands and tied it up in a new, neat braid. "Mom, I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. We'll get through this, you and me." Evelyn's breath shivered in her throat and tears welled up, tracks shining down her cheeks and landing on the bedspread Susan had brought from home. The days crept by. Out the small hospital window, the light shifted, harsh and glaring in the frozen hours of morning, softening as February crept closer, hinting that spring might really return. Evelyn measured time by the square of sky she could see, by the routine of nurses, and most of all, by Susan's company. One afternoon, just as she was drifting into a light doze, she heard the door swing open. There stood Michael, her firstborn. He had changed his suit for a heavier winter coat, still looking almost comically out of place in the small-town hospital. And beside him, a tall, lean man she didn't know, in a crisp gray suit with a red silk tie, briefcase in hand. Something about the man, the way he hovered. Unsmiling and sharp-eyed, said lawyer, before a word was spoken. "Oh, Michael, you made it," she said, offering a tired smile. Michael smiled back, a quick, thin curve of the lips. "I did, Mom. I know it's a tough time. But there's something important we ought to, well, talk about. Whenever you feel up to it." He nodded toward the broad table across from her bed, where the nurses liked to spread out mail and flowers. With care, he set down a thick, business-like envelope. From inside, he pulled out a neat stack of papers. Evelyn immediately recognized the sketch of her house and backyard on the top page. With numbers and values filled in, she traced a trembling finger over the lines. The words at the top stopped her. Agreement to divide estate. "What's all this, Michael?" Michael hesitated. He shifted his weight, glancing at the lawyer, then back to his mother. "We've been thinking, Mom, about the future ahead of time, so there aren't any surprises. It's just practical. Sorting it all before before anything happens. It's just preparation. Nothing more." The lawyer watched impassively as Michael began to read aloud, his voice quiet and oddly distant. "So here's the proposed arrangement. I'll take on the house, the garden, and shed out back. We'll have those divided up. The checking and savings will be split 3 ways, Susan, David, and me. Most of the details can be adjusted if there's something we missed, but it's best if you'd be willing to sign it now, Mom. Save everyone some trouble down the line." Through all of this, Michael never quite looked his mother in the eye. He kept returning to the written numbers, the neat columns, the tidy legal phrases printed in black and white. As Evelyn listened, she suddenly found her eyes drawn down to the paperwork. Her heart thudded hard in her chest, not at the language of inheritance and division, but at the hard, businesslike tone in her son's posture, the careful absence of feeling, the way almost nothing in his glance betrayed any concern for her pain, or even for her presence there in that room. Am I still his mother, or just something to be divided? Am I merely property now? In his eyes, no longer a person? A sudden memory of her late husband Jack burst unbidden into her mind. His favorite phrase, repeated so often. At the end, words don't weigh as much as the look in your eyes. That's where the truth comes out. Right then, Michael's eyes seemed only to speak one truth: anxiety over losing. His share, the cold calculation of someone who wanted not to be left behind in a division. "Mom? Is something wrong?" Michael asked, his voice suddenly wary at the quiet stretching out. "You okay?" Evelyn let the silence deepen before she answered, her voice soft, but firm, every syllable deliberate. "Michael, do you really believe all of this? Every line and page is for everyone's good? Or is it mostly what you want? Are you just pressing this on me because you already know what you'd like best?" There was a stunned silence, so deep she could hear for a moment, only the gentle click of the machines measuring her heartbeat. Michael forced a little laugh, tried to brush her words aside. "Oh, Mom, you're reading too much into it. I'm only thinking of the family. I'd never—" But Evelyn cut him off, still looking steadily not at the numbers, but directly at his careful, superannuated adult face. "Your words say one thing, Michael, but your eyes, they say something very different." Her voice was even, neither angry nor cold, simply resolved. There was a kind of light behind her gaze, steady and grounded. "I'm alive. As long as I'm alive, my wishes are my own. And no one, not even family, gets to take that away from me." A heavy silence lingered in the room. Susan, still in the corner, seemed to hold her breath. The lawyer watched with expressionless eyes, shuffling his papers back into their folder. In the end, Michael gathered the documents together, returned them back to his briefcase and, with a short, careful, "I'll come by again soon, Mom," he and the lawyer quietly left the room. Evelyn lay back against the scratchy, bleached hospital pillow, her mind whirring and her chest tight. But deeper than all the ache and uncertainty was something new, a quiet assurance she had not felt in years. The line that mattered most. Her dignity, her self remained unbroken. And from that place, she held fast to her future, whatever it might hold. After the door shut softly behind them, Evelyn drew in a long, shuddering breath. She let it out slowly, eyes pressed closed for a moment against the spinning weight of sorrow in her chest. "It's sad," she whispered. Not to anyone, not even to herself, but to the quiet air. "He, Michael, used to be so gentle, didn't he?" The words faded, lost in the hush of the hospital room. With trembling fingers, she opened the battered notebook she always kept tucked by her side. This time, she wrote only a single line. "The truest inheritance is the heart you leave behind." In those few words, Evelyn summoned all the love she held as a mother and the dignity she preserved. As her own woman, if she was walking into battle, it would be a quiet one, but she was resolved, resolute. She would see it through. The days passed into early April. The evenings outside still carried a bite of winter, but mornings brought sunlight, soft and gold, spilling through the hospital window. The warmth danced on the pale blue curtains, long fingers reaching for Evelyn's bed. On one such morning, with bird calls echoing from the budding trees beyond the glass, Evelyn Morrison, 83 years old, passed peacefully from this world. The nurses who checked on her late that morning spoke of how she seemed utterly at ease. "She slipped away as if she were only dreaming," one said later, without a trace of suffering, the gentlest look on her face. It was, in its own gentle way, the closing of a careful, well-loved story. At her bedside was only one person, Susan, her daughter, who never left Evelyn's side through all those long months. That same hand worn from helping Evelyn bathe, stroking away the pain on hard nights, offering cool water when she woke thirsty in the dark, remained in Evelyn's palm. Until the very last moment, she left gently, embraced by the love and care of the one who had truly, quietly, been there. It was a quiet, but so very warm, farewell. A week passed in gentle mourning. Then came the day everyone seemed to be holding their breath for, the reading of the will. A small group of family members gathered in the neat, wood-paneled conference room of the town's law office. Outside, the world glimmered with the green promise of April. But within these four walls, the tension was thick and cold as stone. The family's attorney, Mr. Jeffries, silver-haired and grave, unsealed an envelope that bore Evelyn's name. With practiced calm, he began to read the last words Evelyn had left for them all. Her eldest, Michael, crossed his legs and leaned back in his chair, the picture of control, a pen and legal pad at the ready. One might have imagined, watching him, that the only thing on his mind was the calculation of numbers, the division of assets, the checking of columns. He had always been the practical one, the man of the house, at least in theory, if not always in presence. And perhaps in that moment he still believed, quietly, that his role as eldest would see him through. But what he heard next unraveled all of those assumptions. The attorney's voice, even and sure, "I, Evelyn Morrison, being of sound mind and memory, do make, publish, and declare the following as my last will and testament. My home, all the land I own, and every dollar remaining in my savings and accounts, I bequeath in their entirety to the person who cared for me through my final illness, who saw to my daily needs, offered me comfort, and gave me love not in words, but in steadfast action. The reason is simple and clear. The true worth of any person is shown by how they respond when they are needed most. As for my eldest son Michael, he told me, in no uncertain terms, that he wants nothing. In all the time I required help, he neither assisted nor comforted me. Therefore, it is my wish to honor his words, and he shall be excluded from any share of my estate." A stunned silence fell upon the room, like cold water splashed across the table, freezing everyone where they sat. Michael's mouth hung open, his fingers tightening on the pen as if it alone could anchor him to the reality of the moment. "Wait," he managed, breathless and incredulous. "Come on, are you sure this is real? My mother actually wrote this?" Mr. Jeffries met his eyes, calm and unwavering. "Yes, Mr. Morrison. There has been a handwriting analysis. The document is also recorded and validated at the county clerk's office, fully legal in every respect." Michael's face turned a shade paler, eyes darting, looking for support, for loopholes, for escape. "This is a joke. I'm her son. She always said it would be my job to look after the house. This isn't fair. It can't be right. But Evelyn wasn't there to answer. She had already left her words, in this final, written truth, standing before her son as immovable as stone. No one reached out to console him. The other family members all dropped their gazes, the weight of an unspoken understanding keeping them silent and still. Evelyn Morrison had made her choice, quietly but without a doubt. Who had truly loved her? Who stayed by her side, not only in bright times, but in those shadows when action, not intention, matters most? Inheritance is not a matter of property alone. It can be a letter. A last message, left in trust for those who honored the life, not just the ownership, of what was left behind. And so, on that gray April day, Michael rose wordless from his chair, leaving behind his pen, his pad of careful notes, and all hope of an old order that could not survive this final reckoning. His footsteps echoed down the hall, quick, unsettled, his back somehow smaller for the burden it now bore. On the way home, perhaps each family member turned, quietly, to Evelyn's own words. It is in the time of greatest need that a person's true character is revealed. A mother's parting judgment, yet not a punishment, but a call for honesty. A tribute to the truth lived out in quiet, persistent love. And in that, perhaps, her real legacy remained, an honest heart, a home left in caring hands, and the assurance that even in parting, her life's meaning would endure, warm as sunlight on the old Morrison porch come spring. What Evelyn Morrison left behind, in the end, wasn't just a house or a little money in the bank. Her true legacy was something far deeper, a lesson she'd staked her whole life on. Now, exactly 1 year had slipped by since Evelyn passed away. Spring had come again to her old neighborhood in upstate New York. The air was soft and carried the rich, delicate scent of magnolia and cherry blossoms. Gentle winds ruffled through the oaks along the lane, swirling handfuls of petals over the brick walk up to the Morrison home. Up until the day Evelyn left this world, her house was quiet, a hush broken only by shifting sunlight and the memory of feet long grown still. But now, the faded shingle at the curb has been replaced. In crisp, dark letters, it reads, Morrison House, a place of the heart. Yes, that was Evelyn Morrison's name shining there. Her old home, reborn in her honor, now serves the town as a community center for seniors, free of charge, open to all who need it. This place is for those whose families have scattered and for older folks, with nowhere else to turn. Anyone who needs a safe, familiar space is welcome here. No questions asked. The one running everything is the person who stood by Evelyn's side until the very end, her daughter, Susan. Under Susan's care, the cracked linoleum has been replaced, new curtains brighten the windows, and every morning, the aroma of freshly brewed coffee and home-cooked oatmeal greets every visitor. The old kitchen has become the core of the house once more, just as it was when Evelyn would hum while setting the bread to rise. There are hardly any formal rules for coming here. You can drop in for a cup of hot tea, share a word or two, or simply pass an hour in warm quiet. Mostly, this is a place where, when someone needs help, a gentle hand is always ready to reach out. No demands, just kindness. You'll hear a warm, welcome back, or how are you today, feeling all right? Spoken often, and without a second thought. The rhythm of these greetings seems to fill the space with something nostalgic, something familiar, almost as though anyone, for a while, can step back into the heart of a loving family. In the back of the living room, nestled in a quiet corner, stands a small memorial table. There's a photo of Evelyn, a gentle smile, bright and serene, and next to it, her own handwritten words, carefully preserved from the old spiral notebook she kept on her bedside. To believe, truly believe, isn't just leaving matters to chance. It's noticing the little kindnesses and holding them close in your heart. Those words have become a touchstone for all who visit. People pause in front of her picture, reading and remembering, and sometimes find themselves reflecting on their own lives in a new, softer light. One day, a young man wandered in alone, new to town, judging by his neat suit and the nervous way he loosened his tie at the door. He slipped quietly to the memorial, hands folded, and stood there so long in silence that some of the others started to wonder, could he be family? When he finally left, someone murmured, "He looked so much like Michael used to." Evelyn's eldest, the one who'd grown so distant. People often miss one another, sailing side by side through life, never quite touching. Yet as long as some corner of the heart still aches with regret or longing, maybe, just maybe, there will come a chance that yearning will gently blossom into kindness. Evelyn's will was, as ever, clear. She drew the lines precisely, not to punish, but to invite each child to make their own choices. In her last act, she bestowed not just ownership, but responsibility, asking, "Who will carry on the work of true care? To leave a real legacy." It isn't about houses, nor about dollars or deeds. It's about what you place, quietly as a seed, in the hearts of others. Evelyn never had much, if you were to count only her possessions. But her bread, her hands, her simple words, even the upright way she swept the porch at sunset, those things now live on as something real and visible for all to see. Each day, someone new finds their way to Morrison House. Maybe they're anxious, being alone, maybe family troubles weigh heavily, or maybe they just need a place where a forgotten sorrow can be quietly shared. Under Evelyn's photograph, Susan keeps watch with the same patient warmth she learned from her mother. Love is simply being by someone's side. It needs no reason at all. That phrase is written out, neat and steady, and hangs on the living room wall. Each morning, each moment, those words let someone know it's not too late to begin again. Ending narration for video closure. It's possible you've once said, maybe, even meant that, "I don't care about an inheritance." But let me ask you, just this once, to look deep into your own heart and wonder, have I truly lived in a way that makes me someone others cherish and trust? Inheritance is the crystal of trust, handed to those who've earned it and withheld from those who turned away. It's not about numbers, not about wealth. It is what settles quietly in the heart. What about you? Do you find Evelyn Morrison's choice, her reason, and her final lesson fair? Does it ring true? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment and share what's on your mind, because sometimes, one honest word is enough to change someone else's life, maybe even your own. Thank you so much for staying with us until the very end of this story. If Evelyn's journey and the choices she made touched your heart, we'd be deeply grateful if you could show your support with a like, a share, or by passing this story along so that even more people can hear it and, perhaps, see themselves reflected in its message. We believe in bringing you stories that linger. A voice, a moment, a lesson that stays with you long after you've set your phone or device aside. So if you'd like to join us for more meaningful stories like this, please subscribe to our channel. That way you'll always be the first to know when we share another heartfelt tale. We can't wait to welcome you back next time for another story that, we hope, will warm your spirit and maybe even change how you see the world, if only a little. Until then, take care, and may the legacy waiting in every quiet moment, in every act of kindness, shine on in your own life as well. Thank you again, truly, for listening all the way to the end. We look forward to seeing you again soon in our next story.